So let's do another ranking video, shall we? And let's talk about the Friday the 13th franchise, which I have reviewed already on this channel. But thanks to Derek from Derek's Horror Corner, he recommended me doing this, like the ranking of the franchise. And I'm going to rank a lot of other movies that I've already reviewed, like down on my videos that I've done before, like Star Wars and like the Chucky franchise and the Marvel movies and the Halloween movies, which I will do in October sometime because since the new movie's coming out and I've already reviewed those movies. But anyways, this ranking today will be the Friday the 13th franchise, and this is a franchise where it's a franchise that I love a lot of these, and there's some I can't stand. There's some I just think are okay, and I think that it is a very mixed franchise for me, even though there are a lot I love. There's only a couple I really don't like at all, but the thing I like about this franchise is no matter what, I can watch any of these. Like I could put, even the ones I don't like, I could put on in the background. Like I can even, there are moments of a lot of them that I don't even like that I can just watch a couple like scenes of it, like in the background. Like not the whole movie, because the whole movie on some of them I think are boring and uninteresting or bad. But this is a franchise where, despite if they're not good or not, if they're good or not, I will still watch them all in a marathon. Like I always watch them all together. I don't skip out on any of them, except the last one every once in a while, which my number 12 starting out is Jason X. Jason X is one of those movies where I know its intent is to be a so bad it's good movie, and there are some good kills in it. There's well, the kill I only really like is the one with the girl who gets her face smashed. I think the other kills are really, for me, forgettable. Like they're not, like they're very forgettable in a lot of ways. And this movie, in my opinion, is, yeah, it's a so bad it's good movie, but I never felt entertained by it. I mean, I feel like it's growing on me as the years go on, and as I've rewatched this franchise. But it is still my least favorite, and I'll explain why with the other movies why this is my least favorite. But this is my least favorite just because I feel like it's the most dated in terms of how terrible the CGI was, and how the kills, for the most part, I don't think are that enjoyable. The characters, I think, are awful, and I think that some of the lines are trying to be so bad it's good lines, but they're just so awful. And I think that there are people who think this is a fun and enjoyable movie. It's just not really for me. So that's why it's my number 12. Like, it's the last one out of all of them for me. There are a couple shining things. Like I said, the kill with the face smashed down, that one's really great. There are a couple funny lines because they're just so bad they're good. Like, this sucks on so many levels. Like that line. Like, that's a funny line. But the movie also, to me, is just super not interesting. Like, I know people think this is fun, but it's just not as much fun for me. So I can see why people enjoy it. I just don't think it's that interesting. That's why it's my least favorite out of all of them. Now, my number 11 is Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. And this is one that people would probably put at the very bottom. Like, people hate this movie, can't stand it. And I don't hate it, but I really don't like it. Like, it's got a couple cool kills, like the Julius kill, and it's got, like, whenever it gets to the New York part of the movie, I think it's fine. The boat part is totally fine too, but the thing that I think this movie suffers with the most is that this has the most uninteresting cast, I think, out of all of them. Like, even though Jason X is my least favorite, I at least admire Rowan, that main character, more, and because those characters were more quirky, I admire them more. But I put this over Jason X because I do like the New York portion a lot, and the boat part is fine. It's just the characters are so uninteresting and so boring, and literally I think the worst out of all of the films for me. They're the worst characters out of all of them. And the thing that annoyed me too is that the two main characters, Rennie and Sean, like, they're boring and uninteresting. And the thing I really can't stand about this movie is that in Part 7, they do the exact same thing in this movie that Part 7 did, where the main character has a mentor figure, or a relative. In this case, it's her uncle, Rennie's uncle, who pushed her in the lake, and Jason tried to get her whenever she was a kid. And in Friday the 13th Part 7, Dr. Cruz, the mentor of Tina, tortured her and neglected her and abused her to where she would use her psychic abilities. And they both, Dr. Cruz and the uncle in this movie, both die viciously. And it just feels like the exact same thing, but worse, because the character of the uncle, I think it's Uncle Charles in this movie, the uncle character in this movie is just, I don't know, like, he's not anything. Like, Dr. Cruz at least was like a sleazebag who was trying to get money and trying to get Tina to use her abilities, and in this one, this guy is just a dickhead to Rennie, and he doesn't have anything else besides that. And it's the exact same thing as Part 7, but I like Part 7 more with the douchebag older character that is the second villain to Jason in the movie, like in this and Part 7. So I definitely prefer Dr. Cruz as opposed to the Uncle Charles in this one. Like, that guy is just not really that great at all. The actor's fine, but the character is just so dumb. And Jason in this movie looks cool whenever he's like just himself. But whenever you see younger Jason, like Jason that's not like older Jason with a hockey mask, younger Jason, I notice every time that they do so many different actors for young Jason whenever Rennie has these hallucinations, which make no logical sense that she makes hallucinations about Jason. And every time it is a different Jason, it's like there are so many different ones. And I'm stealing this from Derek's Horror Corner whenever he's posted his video on Part 8, because I did notice this too, but I forgot to mention, I think, in my Friday 8 review, but there are so many different actors, kid actors that play Jason in this movie, and they're so obviously different. They're not the same actors at all. And obviously to where they're different from different countries, like an Asian kid, and then a regular kid, and then a deformed Jason. Like, I'm stealing that from him, but I totally, like, I just think that's so hilarious that they have so many actors that play the kid Jason and they're nothing alike. It's really stupid. And it doesn't bother me super like a whole lot with being on a boat, even though I'd rather it be in New York more. It didn't bother me as much with that. Like, it was entertaining with that, but just whenever the characters talked, I just couldn't stand them. Oh, and another connection to Part 7, we have another bitchy character like Melissa. And I forgot this girl's name. I don't even remember what her name is because she was so unmemorable, because she was the exact same character as Melissa. And she barely did anything. She died like 30 minutes in, and all she did was call Rennie like a stupid name. Melissa in Friday 7 was a bitch and a horrible person, and I thought whenever she died, I was so glad. In this one, that other character who's like Tina, or is like how in Part 7, it was not as interesting. It was just, this character is just a bitch again, but she's not as interesting as the other character. So that was another similarity of Part 7. But back to the boat thing. Like, I think it's interesting that they do that, where they didn't have the budget to do it all in New York, but the boat stuff is fine besides the characters, like, talking. Like, they're just so bad. These actors are pretty bad in this movie, and it's unfortunate. I feel like some of them did go on to better things. Like, there's one guy who gets killed in this that's in the Puppet Master movies in 4 and 5, who plays Rick in those movies. He's the guy who gets killed whenever he gets thrown into the pole on top of the boat. But also, the thing I think that is so, like, with this movie, I don't know, I feel like, yeah, the characters are awful, the kills are alright, like, they're totally fine, but the ending is what, besides, like, the New York part whenever they're just in New York for a while is fine. I like that. But, even though, of course, a lot of it's shot in Vancouver, not in New York. But, of course, they've got obvious, like, New York sets, or New York locations, like Times Square. Like, you obviously know that's Times Square, and that is, because they actually filmed it there. But they did trickery to make it seem like a lot of it was there, but it wasn't Vancouver, unfortunately, because they didn't have the budget. But the New York stuff, I think, is totally fine until the last, like, couple minutes, and it is awful because Rennie and Sean are the last ones. Jason's chasing them through New York, and it's totally fine. I like him chasing them down through a subway, through a restaurant. Like, I think that's actually scary. I like that. And then whenever they get underground, this stupid thing that logically would not make any damn sense, where like this guy's working down underground and they're running underground, and he says, "You guys better get out of here. The sewer or this will fill up in 10 minutes with toxic waste." And Jason, of course, gets them, kills that guy. They both get up on this ladder that's going to go out up into the street, but it's closed up. They can't get out. Jason gets destroyed by the acid, and I feel like a lot of people don't realize this, and even when they do realize it, it's still a stupid ending because it's just Rennie hallucinating with Jason. But it makes sense because so many people think this is the way it ended, but it looks like Jason literally just became a kid again. And it's just a hallucination that Rennie is having because you see Jason's mask floating in the water. But the way it was filmed, it made it look like if you casually saw this and didn't realize that it was just a hallucination, it doesn't make any idea to say that it is a hallucination. It's literally just, you see a little kid Jason and she looks at him, like, and it makes it look like he became a kid again, and it's so stupid, so dumb. One of the most stupidest endings in a horror movie ever. Like, and I've seen a lot of stupid shit. Like, I enjoy stupid horror movies, but this was just so, for this franchise, this was so idiotic. And it's making me sound like I should have put this last on my rankings list, but I feel like I said, the New York part I think is totally fine for the most part. I think the boat part is fine. I just don't like the actors or the characters. But it's more watchable to me than Jason X because Jason X has terrible CGI and the kills aren't as interesting to me as opposed to this one, which are just okay too. These kills aren't great either, but I think that the movie itself is more interesting, and I like that it looks like a Friday movie as opposed to Jason X, which is not, with the bad CGI, and it just looks like it's definitely a product of its time. So that's why Jason X is still my last one. And number 10 on my ranking would be the remake. Now, this is one people love or hate, and I will give it its positives. I think the guy, Jarek Mears, who plays Jason, is fantastic. He's great. But these characters are so damn unlikable, and the story is so bland and so uninteresting, and these characters are so uninteresting. So that's why this is so low on the list. Like, a lot of people love this for its brutality, and like I said, the brutality is good, and Jason is good. Jarek Mears is awesome in this movie, but the movie is just suffers for me for having just such an uninteresting characters. They're so unlikable too, and for the most part, besides Clay and Jenna and Whitney, I guess, but Whitney's not in the movie much. And it's like the brutality is good, but the story is just bland and uninteresting, and these kills are honestly not that great either. They're okay. Like the kill at the beginning where the girl is like being filleted in a bag over a fire. Like, that was intense and scary, but it's just like the characters make it suffer for me, give me the reason why this is so low on my list, because I really can't stand most of the characters. And I just don't, and it's the same story, like, it's a best of the Friday films. Like, it steals from 1 through 4 and tries to be all of those movies at once. So the plot is just so uninteresting, and it's not like, these movies are not known for plot, but copying the first 4 movies to me is not very clever. It's just like, oh, you're doing it again, but not with the charming characters or actors from the other movies. So that's why this is so low on the list. It's not awful, but it's not good. Like, I don't think it's great at all, besides, like I said, besides Jarek Mears, who's really, really good as Jason. And the brutality is good, but everything else sucks. I really don't like this remake because of most of those reasons. And my number 9, funny enough, is a movie that I think gets way too much damn hate, because this is it's like Halloween 3, where like Jason isn't really in it. He is in it, but not much. And this takes place in continuity as opposed to Halloween 3, which doesn't even connect to the Halloween films. But Jason Goes to Hell is one of those movies where I'll defend it because I think that this is an ambitious movie. These Adam Marcus, who directed this, really did want to make an ambitious Jason movie. Like, he wanted to make something. He made something to me that, in my opinion, has likable characters, has good kills, really great kills, and it's got a body swap thing. And I think that whether you love or hate this movie, I feel like it is extremely ballsy to do this. And they did it because they didn't have the rights to the Friday the 13th name, so they can use Jason at New Line Cinema whenever this movie had the rights acquired. But they couldn't actually use, like, make it a Friday the 13th movie. They had Jason Voorhees, but they did body swap, so he's barely in the movie. So I guess to appease the rights holders. But this had really likable characters, I thought. I thought all these characters were actually good and interesting, as opposed to 8, which is awful, and Jason X, which is bad too. And I like the kills. The brutality is great. The one kill where the couple is having sex in the tent and Jason gets that pole, cuts her upwards, like up through here, and her shoulder and her arm fall off, and her head like splits in half. Like, that is incredible, and it's an incredible practical effect. I love that, and I think that it is a ballsy movie that deserves more. Whether you love or hate it, I feel like people should give this praise for just being different, because in franchises, there always are ones that are different. For example, say like, and I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but any of the Star Wars movies, after the original trilogy, everybody hates on the prequels, Last Jedi, Force Awakens, whatever. Like, everybody hates on all those movies because they're not the original trilogy and actually do different stuff. I mean, Force Awakens is kind of the same, like, New Hope-ish. I mean, it's got the basics of New Hope, but like The Last Jedi and the prequel trilogy use so many different things, and people, whether you love or hate those, can you at least agree that they're different and they're trying to be ambitious and not trying to be the same thing over? That's how I feel about franchises, with being different in individuality, and I feel like this does a great job. Jason Goes to Hell as being an individual Friday movie that, to me, I actually really enjoy. Like, I think it's great, even though it's number 9, but there's so many great ones after this, So number 8 is Part 7, The New Blood. Now this one, if watching these movies in order, every time I do it, after the 6th movie, the first 6 movies I think have a really great set of casts, like cast actors and characters in those movies, in the first 6 movies. And then when we get to Part 7, I like Tina, everybody else is just really bland and uninteresting, and that's what really suffers after Part 7. They are all bland and uninteresting, and this really suffers from that. These characters are so boring and so uninteresting, and the actors portraying these characters, I feel like they know that they're in a Friday the 13th movie, so they don't have to try. In the first like 5 or 6 movies, these people had charisma, and in this one they don't. Tina's the only one that I actually really enjoy. Like, Lar Park Lincoln is really great in this movie, and really sympathetic and really likable, and I love the fact that it is a Jason versus Carrie type of thing, because they were going to do Freddy versus Jason, but they didn't have the rights yet. So they did a Jason versus Carrie thing, which was really fun, really awesome. For the most part, I liked this movie. The kills were neutered, but I thought that the moments with Tina and Jason fighting each other was great. Really some of the best in the franchise, but the kills are neutered, the characters are super uninteresting and dumb, but it's still, like, it just felt like the first one, if I'm watching them in order, the first one after the first 6, that really was a downgrade from the first 6. So that's why this is number 8. So overall, that one is not very... It's got good things about it, it's got some bad things about it. That's why it's number 8. Number 7 is Freddy vs. Jason, funny enough, which is one that, after watching so many videos on this, and seeing the movie so many times, there are people who hate this movie, there are people who love this movie, there are people who are in between, and to me, I'm in between. Like, I love that this is just a straight up, I can watch it anytime. Like, I can watch this movie anytime. It's just so fun, so entertaining. I think that the characters are not great, besides Laurie, which honestly I actually liked a lot. I liked Laurie a lot. I liked Will. I liked how they both had stories and connections to Freddy, and how Freddy, like, had Will basically sent to the Weston Hills, and with Lori, Freddy killed her mother, so it had a connection between that. And I liked that it felt warranted in the end whenever she cut Freddy's head off at the end. Like, I just thought that was great because they suffered through so much, and I liked Monica Kena's performance. I thought she was good, and I thought that this is it's a mixed movie because Ronnie, you definitely did not see any Friday movies before this, so there are things that people get so mad about, and I understand completely. I completely sympathize with people who don't like this, and I am not saying that this movie is amazing. There are parts of it that I think are amazing. I love the cinematography. I love, even though it's a lot of CGI, I love the visuals with the kills. I like the two main characters a lot. I thought that it's just a fun popcorn movie. Like, it is the example, I think, of this franchise of a fun popcorn movie. Like, you can literally just watch it. I can watch it anytime, for me personally. And I know people love or hate it or in between, but I think this is just really, really fun despite having a lot of issues to it. And then here we go. This is where it's going to get really controversial. My number 6 is Part 4, the final chapter. Now, this is one people think is the best one out of all of them, and I do love this movie. But whenever I think of the ones that I want to, like, if I had to watch them, like, if I wanted to watch one of these first, the first one, it would not be this one. I don't know why. I do love it. I do love all the things people appreciate about this movie, but I never have felt the love for it. Like, I love the ones after this movie more, even though this one is still just as good as the other ones, but I feel like I don't know. This one is one where it's interesting. Like, again, I still love it, so I'm not saying it's bad at all. I just have never thought it's my favorite. Even though it's got fantastic kills, it's got really fantastic, likable set of characters. I like that they all had, like, kind of their own plots, which actually for a horror movie is actually really good. And I thought that Jason is really menacing in this as well, but it just is not one that I think is my favorite out of all of them, even though it's really fantastic. It's just not my favorite one out of all of them. And it's bad that it's number 6. It makes it look bad that I have it there, but I still love this movie. Like I said, love the kills, love the characters, love how they kill Jason off. And I thought that it was overall fantastic, but it's just not my favorite one. And my number 5 would be Part 1, funny enough. The first Friday the 13th. Now, this one, if you went into this in 1980 with no sequels, no Jason, no anything, I would have actually thought this was really, really great. And I think it still is fantastic too, but I love this movie because this one always, to me, it's because it's the most simplest one, even though all these movies are simple horror movies, but I think that this one does a great job of building tension. Like, this is the first one, and I feel like it's got the least kills, I think, in the whole franchise. I think it does. So I think like 5 people die. So it made it way more, I don't know, people complain about the characters, but I thought the characters were interesting, and I thought that everything about it, the build-up was great. I thought that they did a great job of having this mystery, and whenever you realize who the killer is, Pamela Voorhees, I really love Betsy Palmer's performance in this movie. She is fantastic. And for her to have a fantastic performance in this movie when she called the script a piece of shit, like, that's just a funny devotion type of thing that she did. Like, I love how she thinks it was awful, but she just gave it her all, and she gave a fantastic performance in this. She is scary. In a lot of ways, she is scarier than Jason in the way she talks to herself. That is legitimately frightening. The scenes where, at the end, whenever Alice is running around and it shows the fading picture of her teeth, like her talking in Jason's voice saying, "Kill her, mommy, don't let her live. Kill her, kill her, kill her." Like, that is legitimately creepy. Like, that actually is one of the scariest things in this whole franchise, and I love that. I love the final fight between them both, even though they're just kind of pushing each other around. But I think that it's great because it's the first one that started this hokey type of charm that all these films have, where they're silly. And whenever it has the moment where Alice picks up the machete, slow motion, that burr, burr, burr music, and like Mrs. Voorhees just goes, and then just chops her head off. Like, that was just so entertaining and so fun. And I liked all these characters. They're not as in depth as like the other ones on this list, or even part 4, but I put this over 4 because Mrs. Voorhees in this one is scarier than Jason in 4, and Jason is scary in 4, but I thought that she just gave off such an incredible performance, even though she's not in it much. She's only in the third act, or the last like 20 minutes, but she is fantastic, and I think that she really gives this movie her all. And I think that Alice is good. I like Alice a lot. I think she's a great final girl, even though she's kind of playing in terms of standards, like her character is playing in terms of standards of all the Friday movies. But I really love her in this movie, and I love the kills. Getting the arrow through the throat. Even though some of them are cutaway kills, I think they're still scary. Like whenever Annie gets killed, and then you see the aftermath later. Like, that's really scary. Well, I mean, you see that, but the kills work in this movie for me. And I think it's a great slow build, and I think it's the slowest one on purpose because it was the first one. It's not like they needed to have a giant body count in this one, and I felt like that might be a reason why people don't think this is their favorite, but I think that this is one of my favorites. The first 6 are just fantastic, but I love this one for Betsy Palmer, for Alice, for some of the kills. I think that this just really gives off such a great first horror movie, even though it's my number 5. And my number 4 would be Part 2. Now, Part 2, I feel like does everything great what Part 1 did, besides having Betsy Palmer gone, because she's fantastic in the first one. But I love the fact that Jason's first outing, like, he is, like, it's more of a, like, you don't see him much at all. And that's what makes him really scary in this movie, because you don't, like Mrs. Voorhees in the first one, you don't see him much. You just see, like, say, like, when Crazy Ralph's watching Alice and Paul make out, then you see, like, rope go across the tree. You don't see his face. You just see hands go. And then, like, whenever the cop goes into that bathroom, or that outhouse bathroom that Jason's been living in, then you just see a hand get a hammer, hammer the cop in the head. Like, I like how Jason is in it, but he's very discreetly shown, and I think that that makes him scary, really scary, honestly. And I know they did that because this is Part 2, where, like, Mrs. Voorhees is dead, Jason's alive, maybe, but even though you knew, I feel like people knew going into this in 1981 that it was Jason, because it's like, who else could it be? But I just love that, and I love Jenny. I think she's one of the best final girls. I think she's great. I think that she so likable, so nice, and she's got a great, like, she's got the most sympathy for Jason out of all of them, I think, because she actually, like, in that bar scene alone, which is great, where she's talking about, like, this poor kid, like, he literally watched his mother die, and he's like, wouldn't you feel bad for him? And it makes sense with Alice and having a psychology degree, so, like, she's literally thinking from a human standpoint, like, this person is horrible, like, you feel bad for this person killing people, like, but he had a horrible thing because of that, like, he had a horrible childhood, like, he lost his mother. I mean, no, he drowned, and then his mother got beheaded. How would you feel? I mean, I don't condone murder, but yeah, it's just like, he's a sympathetic character, and I love how Ginny's the one who actually realizes that, and she's just such a likable character, and Amy Steele is great in this. So I love her in this. The kills are all great. The bed scene is great, even though that's copied off of, I think, a Giallo film. I don't know which one it's called. Was it called Bay of... No, not Bay of Blood. I don't remember. But it was one of those. But the kills are great. I think the characters are great and interesting. I like how half of the people live through this movie and never come back. That's cool. Like, that's a funny thing that the other films don't do. I like how half of them don't just stay at the bar all night and live. I thought that was hilarious. So, and the ending is great with Jenny faking out Jason again, using her psychology degree. That's awesome. And faking him out, and then that jump scare at the end is really fantastic, even though it's a dream. Really great, though. So I love that. So Part 2 is fantastic as well. And then my number 3 would be Part 6, Jason Lives. Now, this one in terms of entertainment, this is one of the most entertaining. It's got great self-aware humor that even Wes Craven used, or saw this movie and even stated that he was like he used this to make something like Scream. Like, he actually thought this humor was great, this meta humor, and that's probably why Scream is considered great. Like, because this humor was great in this movie. These characters are great. They're so interesting. The kills are good, but they're kind of neutered. But like, there's some good kills that you see unedited that are really good, but they're not in the movie because the MPAA, of course. But this is a really great, a great sixth movie. Which 6 movies usually aren't that great in franchises, so that's awesome. And Zombie Jason's cool. I like the Human Jason more, but Zombie Jason's cool as well. I liked how Tommy returned from 4 and 5, even though it's Tom Matthews this time, and it's third different actor, but that's totally fine because Tom Matthews is awesome in this movie. He's great in it, and I think that just kills are great, the humor's great, the characters are great. Overall, this is just fantastic because of that. It's one of the best just because of being so overly entertaining. And then my number 2 would be Part 3. Now, Part 3, the reason why Part 3 over all these other movies is my second favorite is because this one is the most scariest one, I think, for Jason. And this is the first one I watched in full, so that might have a reason why. Because, like, I'm gonna just skip on the characters and the kills in this movie because the characters and the kills are good. I like both. I think they're awesome. But the third act, I think, is the best third act in any of the films. I love the third act. And Chris is a fantastic final girl. Like, she is. I love how this badass she is, even though she's scared and freaked out. But anybody would be dealing with a killer. And Jason, I think, is the scariest in this movie out of all of them. The scenes whenever he is chasing her around the cabins is scary. Whenever she gets into her van, the gas doesn't work because the bikers siphoned it out earlier. It stops. Jason puts his hands in there, tries to choke her. She puts the window up. Then he just breaks the glass. And then she runs out. And this is a great camera view where she runs out in the front view of the camera down on the ground. And then you see Jason in the background just running after her. And it is legitimately frightening. I think that is... moments like that makes us the scariest Jason out of all of them. He legitimately frightens me in this movie and just how he runs. And just having him far in the background and see how fast he runs towards her is scary. And whenever she axes him, it's great. Like, that was a cool first final chapter because this was originally going to be the last one. They even made a birthday cake or death day cake for Jason in the studio whenever this movie was made. Like, they were done. And then, of course, they made billions of sequels. But I loved how he died in this one, too. I loved how he was axed in the face. Like, that was a good kill. And him chasing around in the cabins is scary, too. Whenever she's in that closet and he's outside, she sees through the peephole, he's running at her. Like, he knows she's just in there, so he's got an axe. It is scary. And I love the third act. Like, the third act is incredible. And that fake-out dream, even though she wouldn't know who Mrs. Voorhees is good in terms of her sitting on the little canoe, looking in the window, and Jason all bloody with no mask is really scary. Just him sitting in there, and the score is terrifying. And that is one of the scariest... Like, the third act is the scariest third act, I think, in the whole franchise. And I don't get scared of these movies. And I think that this is the scariest third act in the whole franchise. Like, him chasing her, running around, him without his mask on in the dream, all bloody, that is terrifying. And he is just scary running and chasing after her. So I love this one. This one's... And I love the first 6, but this one it has a special place in terms of the ending. The ending is fantastic. Now, my number 1, let's be really controversial. Which one have I not talked about? Let's talk about Part 5, A New Beginning. This one, God, I love this movie. It's just so batshit insane. I think that this just makes it so entertaining. This, like I was talking about Freddy vs. Jason, how unwatchable it is, but I have issues with it. This one is so infinitely rewatchable. There are times where I want to watch the franchise and I'm like, no, but I don't have time. I gotta watch other stuff or I gotta do other stuff. But then I'm like, well, I could just put it in part 5, or I could listen to Danny Steinman's commentary again, because I've listened to his commentary a lot. Um, I just love how entertainingly fun this movie is. This movie is the most entertaining for me out of all of them. I love all the characters. I love how it looks. I love how it's got this sleazy porn style look because Danny Steinman was a porn director. It gave it a different identity. These characters all gave this movie a different identity. They were fun, they were silly, they were goofy, they were over the top. It reminds me of Sleepaway Camp in a way, where Sleepaway Camp has so many goofy, over-the-top performances, but it makes it so infinitely watchable, or rewatchable. These characters are great. The kills, again, are neutered because of the MPAA, but I think that they are fine even though they don't show all the kills. But I think that it's just, in terms of entertainment, this movie is incredibly entertaining. Like I've said in my review, like, the two rednecks are the funniest characters in this movie and in the franchise. And I love how this has at the time, the biggest body count. I think that Jason X has the biggest body count now, unless it's the remake. It might be the remake now, but I think it's either that or the remake that has the biggest body count now. But this one at the time had the biggest body count, and Jason wasn't even the killer. And that's why people hate this movie, because Jason isn't the killer. He's dead. Like, the thing I love too is that they gave devotion to the last movie, where they said Jason is dead in this movie. He is gone. Dead and gone. Even though, of course, he comes back in part 6 because of the backlash for this movie, but I want to root for the underdogs. I love how infinitely entertaining this is. I love Tommy's story arc. He actually has the most of a story arc than any of these characters in any of the franchise, even though I love the other films. But Tommy in this movie, he does have a full arc, even though they disregard it in 6, because it starts out where Tommy is mentally unstable after 4 because he killed Jason. Trisha's gone. We don't know where she is. Is she dead? I don't know. But Tommy has this full arc where he keeps hallucinating about Jason throughout the whole movie, and it does a great job of implying he might be the killer. And then at the end, he gets the knife and gets to Pam, even though he doesn't kill her. In the novelization, it says that she calms him down and he lives, or she lives. But I love Tommy in this movie too. And even though Corey Feldman and Tom Matthews are awesome, this one is like, why am I blanking on his name? God, the guy who played Tommy in this movie. I'm blanking on him. I literally just had his name in my head, but whatever. Whatever, I'll just, like, the guy who played Tommy, I think, is really awesome in this movie as well. John Shepard. God, I don't know why I was blanking on him. John Shepard is great in this movie, too. He's just as great as Tom Matthews or Corey Feldman, because he does a different performance. All three of them do different performances. Young Tommy Corey Feldman is this young kid dealing with nothing, and then Jason appears. In this one, he is a messed up person who encountered killing a killer and, like, the repercussions of that. And Tom Matthews is the fun one, where, like, he's cured now in 6. But in this one, I love that Tommy is this character who has completely lost it, and it does a great job of implying he might be the killer. And again, like the first one, this is a whodunit. And Roy, I think, is a great killer, only in this one, because he dies at the end, but he's a great killer in this one. I love how this is a whodunit, and it does a great job of doing like an implication on anybody. I love how Tommy is one of the biggest suspects, because Tommy is messed up. He's deranged because of what he did. He killed Jason, and he might have had Trish die. Like, his family's gone, because he's on his own in this mental institution that they sent him to the halfway house. So he's been on his own for whatever time. They don't explain it. But, like, Tommy is a big suspect. The rednecks are a suspect, even though, of course, they wouldn't be the killers, but they're a suspect because they, like, say that they're going to kill everybody. And all these other characters will say stuff like, I want these people dead. Like, stuff like that, where it makes you imply that they could be the killers too. And I just love how... And the character at the beginning of the movie who kills the mentally challenged kid. And I'm blanking on the names because I didn't rewatch this movie, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the names tonight anyways. But the character who acts as Joey at the beginning of the movie, he could have been the killer too. Like, they do a great job of giving all these characters ways to interpret that they could be the killer. And they trick us all. I mean, well, the Roy part, like at the beginning, whenever Joey gets axed, Roy makes a face at the camera, but it's like every other character says something creepy or killer-like, so like you don't know which one is the killer. So they did a good job of that. I really love that. I just love this movie overall. I love the entertainment value of it. It's just incredibly fun, incredibly entertaining. These characters are all interesting, all fun. I love the style of the cinematography. I love the kills, even though some of them are neutered, but I loved all of this movie. Like, this is why it's my favorite, just because it's so infinitely entertaining. I know it's not the best one, but it's, for me, infinitely entertaining. So, whew, this is good. I'm out of breath. So, thanks everyone for watching if you did. Tell me what your ranking is down below, and if you have a video, tell me what it is. So, thanks for watching my ranking.